Welcome back to another episode of the Endangered Species Update. In this installment, I have 4 important bird stories to share with you, but let's begin with the tale of Singapore's first breeding pair of peregrine falcons. Peregrine falcons are recognizable across the globe thanks to their worldwide distribution. Now, these impressive raptors have added a new place to their list of countries to call home, as Singapore just announced the birth of the nation's first pair of peregrine falcons. Peregrine falcons have demonstrated their adaptability by nesting on cracks and crevices in tall buildings throughout the world, as such places are good substitutes in areas that are devoid of the tall cliffs where they historically would have nested. Singapore has long waited to host a breeding pair of peregrine falcons, but now, this year, 2025, a breeding pair has finally taken up residence in the OCBC Bank Center. The peregrine falcons were encouraged to nest at the center after conservationists noticed that a pair of peregrine falcons had a failed breeding attempt here in 2024. The new nesting platform included the gravel substrate in which peregrine falcons like to lay their eggs. This made them feel right at home and allowed them to successfully nest here in 2025. Sure enough, the pair of peregrine falcons again tried nesting here following their failed attempts the previous breeding season. Peregrine falcon pair got off to a shaky start in this breeding season, abandoning 10 eggs before finally incubating 3 eggs in March of 2025. After a few weeks, 2 of the 3 eggs hatched, and the young are now developed into healthy, young adult peregrine falcons. Now that the first 2 peregrine falcons have been raised in Singapore, conservationists hope that the birds can build off of this momentum and build a strong population in this country that offers plenty of places to nest and ample pigeons to eat. A small town in Michigan recently earned the state's first bird-friendly city designation, an honor given to towns which promote bird conservation and environmental sustainability while actively trying to reduce the threats faced by birds. Roscommon, Michigan is famous among the state's birders for the work that the community has done for the once endangered Kirtland's Warbler. Thanks to places such as Roscommon, the Kirtland's Warbler has now been downlisted to near threatened. The community hosts an annual Kirtland's Warbler festival at the start of each summer. Here, people gather to not only observe this rare bird, but to learn about it and celebrate its miraculous recovery. This year, Roscommon unveiled an enormous Kirtland's Warbler sculpture at the beginning of the festival. This sculpture will be one of the most prominent features of town, and it'll be a fitting icon for a place that hosts one of the biggest breeding populations of Kirtland's Warblers in the world. Hopefully this sculpture will further people's admiration of this endangered bird. The Lesser Prairie-Chicken once again finds itself in the middle of a legal battle to determine their fate. Though ornithologists have recognized since the late 1990s that this species of grouse desperately needs protection from the federal government, they've been unable to secure a stable spot on the endangered species list. This is largely due to the fact that the shortgrass habitat where these birds thrive is sought for oil extraction, wind turbine installation, and grazing. The Lesser Prairie Chicken is a species that's very familiar to me, as I helped conduct a comprehensive population survey of this species in Kansas, Texas, Oklahoma, and Colorado back in 2022. There are no recognized subspecies of the Lesser Prairie Chicken. These birds inhabit 4 distinct ecoregions throughout their range. Moreover, the birds that live in New Mexico and western Texas are completely isolated from the rest of the Lesser Prairie Chicken population. Though an estimated 30,000 Lesser Prairie Chickens remain, as few as only 500 remain in the New Mexico and western Texas population. Considering these numbers, the isolated population was classified as endangered under the United States Endangered Species Act, while the remaining core population was described as threatened. These are both sound scientific classifications based on the numbers available to ornithologists. The research that I helped conduct suggested that the birds that live in New Mexico and western Texas numbered about 3,000 in 2012, but only 10 years later, in 2022, that same population was estimated to be only about 500 birds. Such a severe decline would certainly warrant protection on the endangered species list. Unfortunately, the Trump administration is actively trying to remove the protections of the Lesser Prairie Chicken, suggesting that giving different legal protections to different populations of the same bird undermines the very nature of the Endangered Species Act. They also assert that there are plenty of voluntary programs for landowners to enroll in that can help the Lesser Prairie Chicken. Therefore, the administration suggests the Lesser Prairie Chicken doesn't need protection from the federal government, since there are already plenty of programs in place to help them. Although there are some voluntary programs in place to help the Lesser Prairie Chicken, the population survey numbers suggest that these programs have not been adequate at preserving the species and reversing the declining population trends. Advocates for the Lesser Prairie Chicken fear that stripping the bird of any legal protections will only result in more habitat loss at the hands of the fossil fuel industry and put these amazing grouse species on the brink of extinction. The White-rumped Vulture has suffered staggering population losses after being perhaps the world's most numerous vulture as recently as 1985. Alas, Soon after that, populations crashed as livestock began to be treated with diclofenac, a compound that is lethal to vultures when consumed. Now, no more than 15,000 white-rumped vultures remain, and these birds are critically endangered. This means that every white-rumped vulture is precious, and conservationists in India recently announced good news that 3 of these impressive raptors have been released into the wild following 3 years in captivity. The good news comes after the 3 white-rumped vultures were rescued as chicks and then taken to a rehabilitation facility. Unfortunately, the rehabilitation facility where they lived the first few years of their life was inadequate to address their needs, so they were transferred to a different rehab center in October of 2024. The trio of the endangered siblings were transferred to the Wildlife Transit Rehab Center in Pune, India, a place that specializes in the rehabilitation of wild animals back into their natural environments. Although the vultures were not in great shape when they arrived at this wildlife rehab center, the experts on staff soon went to work and got the vultures feeling healthy and strong once again. Finally, in May of 2025, these vultures were released back into the wild where they belong. The largest of the 3 vultures was fitted with a GPS tracker, and ornithologists have confirmed that these birds have successfully integrated into a flock of wild birds. This is very encouraging news for a species whose populations have declined by 99% in the last few decades. That's all for this endangered species update. Don't forget to leave a like if you enjoyed this content, and be sure to subscribe so you stay up to date on all the latest endangered bird news. Worldwide Birder, out.